I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Diane Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it?
How are you?
Hello, my friend.
Oh.
How am I?
Yes, how are you?
I am here. I am weary, but I am here.
What is the thing that's holding you the most weary at this moment?
It just has been, it's been a time in life where life just keeps lifing, since Thanksgiving. I've had continuous family members with pretty intense illnesses, getting married in the middle of all of that. And my daughter's apartment burning down, and then now a death in the family that we need to travel for services and whatnot. So I need to do a little bit more filling up of my cup, because the cup is rapidly getting empty, and I'm getting short. My fuse is like really short, and I'm striking out a little bit more than I should, and so all those things, need to take care of myself. So
absolutely. I receive that. I receive the sentiment and the intention to be filling up our cups the best that we can, because I'm still struggling with trying to keep an organization that does some type of transitional social justice work afloat. After having been abandoned, after spending, 2-year period trying to go through a DEI process, and then seeing the discomfort of that process, and believing that caused a lot of exiting, of being able to have to sit in the realities of our world. And that is, a transition into this conversation about the state of the union, the state of our actual union, when we are talking about on a level of being somebody who is experiencing life as a U.S. citizen at this moment in time under the current administration. And we just had one of the addresses, and I wanted to kind of talk about some of the impacts of those statements, remarks, and the key areas of interest that we look at when we're looking at the United States. So some of the key areas that were uplifted in the State of the Union address included healthcare, social programs, crime and safety, of course, foreign policy, which is near and dear to my heart, immigration, which was the most glaring example of violence and harm they're experiencing, and of course, our economy, as the U.S. is experiencing a different economic positioning across the globe, and what Trump's policies are to address and deal with that. So, while we're dealing with our individual lives, trying to stay afloat as U.S. citizens on this territory, and the state of our union and our reality, and then what our administration is experiencing as the state of the union. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. I mean, for those, shout out to any of our new listeners or viewers. The State of the Union is something that the U.S. government, the language of the law or the rule that says that the president has to report to Congress the state of our union in
No, it's
January.
Culture. Huh? It's culture. It's more cultural.
Yeah, it's not. It could be a piece of paper, although we know that Trump is not capable of reading or writing anymore, probably. So it doesn't have to be this big pageantry, but it has, of course, been that for many years, over many administrations, and Trump is no different in that. And they tend to invite certain people to make certain points. They'll invite guests to stand up and be applauded and be highlighted to signify or make the point of whatever whatever foolishness they're trying to get across to the people that are watching. And the way the chamber is set up is very obviously partisan. All of the Republicans sit on one side and all of the Democrats sit on the other, depending on
There's a
who.
specific area for the Supreme Court justices.
Yes, they're down in front, but they don't have to. Not all of them are always there. So they, but they're not allowed to applaud. They're not allowed to stand up. They're not allowed to react in any way. They even go so far as to designate a survivor. So there's always one member of Congress, and they don't know who that's going to be until the day of the address, that gets told they can't come. And that person is, because if anything happens and somebody attacks the Capitol building with all of the leaders inside, because the president, the vice president, the speaker,
everyone's there. Oh, I did not know.
Yeah.
Ritual. Okay.
There's actually a television show called Designated Survivor, and that's what it's referring to. So every year during the State of the Union, there's always one member of Congress that gets told at the very last minute they can't go.
Hold on, why don't we get to vote on who that person is?
Yeah,
I mean, that should be set to the American public to be able to vote on.
You would think, but it's usually a very insignificant person that nobody really knows about or cares about, like the Department of Agriculture.
The person designated to run our country.
Yeah, they're the person that if somebody attacks the Capitol and takes out all of our leaders, that's the person that's going to be the leader. So it's
this is
nobody ever knows who it is.
When you learn this type of situation, I never heard of it before.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Well, what's interesting is that this year we were just discussing before we came on that I was saying that I wished that all of the Democrats would just not show up, because as we're going to talk about in some of the things that came up during the State of the Union, the pattern is usually that the president offers remarks, and when he makes a point that he's particularly proud of, then he waits for everybody to applaud. And it's usually either his side, the people that support him are going to stand up and applaud, and the others sit down and are silent. Sometimes the people that sit down also applaud, but they don't stand up. So it's definitely a show of
your positioning.
Yeah, it's all theater, Yes. But I would love, because this particular president is such an attention hoarder, I would love for the Democrats to have last year, remember they had those signs. They had those little signs that they that they held up, and, they thought that was doing something. And I'm like, why are you even going? So this year, there were particular members of Congress that did not go. I don't know what the number is. I know that my senator, Chris Murphy, was one of them. And apparently they had a rally. They held a rally in the mall, which is that long stretch of grass in D.C. between the Washington Monument and the White House. And so they apparently had a rally or something in defiance of the State of the Union. So yeah, it's all theater. It's always been all theater, but with Trump at the helm, it's particularly theater-esque.
Right. I mean, because, we elected into office a
reality show host.
Right. A theatrical player, somebody who knows how to play the game at the height of the game.
Right.
And I do have a little bit of pushback, though, to this concept of the Democrats not showing up for a number of reasons. I'm thinking about the theatrics of the American public. It is important for me to see my representative on how they are in responsiveness. So them not being there, yes, does speak to something. But I prefer my representative bearing witness to the madness. To being present, to actually being like, I was there, I saw, heard, and understood the legislation or the ideology to have been received in this way. Like, I want you to be present. And I also want you to be representative of my positioning in this person's face, to like physically stand and say that I am not in agreement, or I am in agreement with some of the things that you're talking about. I think that that's really important to see. There was a moment where I remember Donald Trump saying, "Oh, it's crazy. Look at them. They're not standing up for this. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy." And even in the theatrics of that, there was a statement. When you're not present, you're just not present. So you can't actually have that engagement to see your actual stance and responsiveness. And so I enjoy seeing the responsiveness of both of the crowds. I enjoy seeing how thoroughly committed the size of people that are aligned with him, how they operate, like what they're standing, what they're excited about, like how loud the clap is for certain policies, because then it gives some knowledge about how legislation is going to move and the way that these people are thinking about representing and legislating the United States. It's really important to watch that level of theatrics, because I think it's a lot of truth telling and storytelling in it.
I think I agree with you in theory based on how the State of the Union has operated in the past, but it's so obvious and clear. I mean, it's always been partisan, but I feel like it's even more so, like the veil, the hood, all of that is no longer present. And because this particular president craves attention and he craves people being there, he craves the Democrats showing up. The thing that he kind of went off on, they're not standing, is the statement that he had made, as I remember it, is that American citizens are more important than illegal aliens. He used the term illegal alien to refer to anybody who is not designated as an American citizen and who has come to this country seeking asylum or whatever, and who might be undocumented. And he had used that term all throughout the toast, all throughout the speech. But it is like a toast. It is like a toast. It's a roast, really. But that's when the Democrats didn't stand up. Then it was all about shame on them for not standing up. They don't care about American citizens. They care more about illegal aliens.
Which is also like, if they had not shown up, think about how the spin on that.
Well, that's my point. But that's my point, is that if they weren't there at all, first of all, it takes them weeks to write this speech, right? And he relies on the Democrats being there and not standing up and not applauding at certain times so that he can have that moment of, look how messed up they are. They don't, they're not true Americans. If they weren't there at all, none of his laugh lines, none of his jokes, none of his pre-existing or expectation of being able to, say fuck you to the Democrats because they didn't do what he knew they weren't going to do in whatever moment. None of that would have worked because they wouldn't have been there, right?
Yeah, but something more, I think, intensely impactful could have happened. They're not even here. Look how much they don't care. They're not even here to represent and to.
Yeah, but how many times could he say that before he
the
had
entire time?
Yeah,
marketing and branding means that he would be doing what they've done with white supremacy, saying that whiteness is great forever and ever and ever. It's repetition.
But he said that anyway.
Doing repetition on the immigrants of being like over criminalized.
Yeah,
I just think that would have been a much more disastrous outcome for him to be able to say they're not even showing up for you, American people, U.S. citizens. They're not even showing up to hear what the State of the Union is.
But we know that's not true. We know that
none of that he said is true.
Right, I know. But it's like if all of the Democrats who had chosen not to show up, if they had done what, the ones that didn't go did on the mall, for example, they all got in front of a microphone and said, I'm not going, and here's why I'm not going, X, Y, and Z. I am going to be in a town hall in my district. So come and spend time with me and let's talk about how we can fix. It was an opportunity for them to do it differently, to not only totally derail anything that he would have said, because everything he said in that room wasn't true anyway. Everything he said in that room was completely upholding white supremacy anyway. Had they not been there and had he not really anticipated them not being there, it would have,
thrown him off his game.
It would have thrown him off, and he would not have been able to just keep saying, look, they're not here. Look, they're not here. Or he would have, and would have completely derailed the whole night anyway. So to me, them being there, I hear what you're saying about you wanting them to be there to represent you. And I guess
to bear witness.
to bear witness, but it's like they could bear witness in many other ways. They didn't have to be there to bear witness, and not being there could have been a real statement, and they could have done something different with their time that would have been more, would not have given him the show that he wanted to have. So they did two things. They gave him the show that he wanted, and they didn't affect anything that happened in that room. It would have happened anyway. So I guess I want him to shake it up and do it a little differently. And so.
No, I definitely hear your organizing disruptive spirit in it. I hear it. And we need that. We absolutely 100% need that. And just like different strategies and tactics, I do think that I don't put the stealth skill to spin narratives towards their side and their intentional purpose. I believe that the administration and the party have that skill really well developed.
The Republicans?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I am not going to particularly make a distinction between Republicans and Democrats.
No, there is no distinction.
I'm going to say the administrations and those that are managing and ruling and administrating in this administration. Mm-hmm. And they can fall on whatever side that they fall on, because I'm seeing and experiencing a lot of very conservative, typically identified, Democratic ideologies. I'm seeing a lot of faith-based ideologies, from the past that are coming up. I'm seeing a lot of, gender-based ideologies that cause harm, that fall across both lines.
Right.
And so I'm not even going to make the distinction between Republican and Democrat, though. Going back to the State of the Union address, there was an actual visible demonstration of the different political ideologies, but they didn't get to the heart of the main issues that were being discussed. So, right. And just by that visual thing, it was, for me, it felt much more of like, rather than a political and a legislative thing, it was much more of a faith-based and cultural, ideological.
Yeah. It was a rally.
Policy and practice than
it was a rally,
union address, because we can't even really pay attention to any of the facts that were being spewed during the speech, because most of them, if we're looking even at the document that was kind of collected, most of it was fact checked as being false. And as people were listening to the State of the Union, we're listening, and even if you don't do the detailed checking, that a lot of the things that they're saying, just by existing in community, it was not true.
Yeah.
So,
and there are people that have bullhorns in the media and stuff that could spend the time afterwards making a very clear argument about how false most of what he said was. Absolutely. And they don't do it. They don't necessarily do it. Some do it half-assly. I guess I feel like because I agree with you that I don't feel like there is a discernible difference between Republicans and Democrats. As long as anybody, this is my opinion about it, as long as anybody still wants our government to operate like it is, they're not operating for the people, because our government as it stands does not operate for the people. It does not support the people, I don't believe. And
that was one of the central questions that the Democratic response asked. Like, who is this government working for?
They're not working for anybody except themselves. They're working for the 1%. They're working for the Epstein class. Mm-hmm. And so if we know that to be true, then that would also be a reason why the Democrats missed an opportunity to just not show up and say, you know what, we're going to do it differently. Sitting in that chamber and listening to all of the falsehoods that speak nothing to what's actually happening to the people of the U.S. and what their needs are is a waste of my time. It's a waste of your time. I mean, I'm not saying to be silent about that. I'm saying they need to have megaphone, they need to be.
But the visuals of that, though, would be that as this man is spewing all of these misinformation, and you have an entire room of the people that are aligned with him standing up and clapping and clapping and clapping. And then there's no demonstration of any response to it at all.
Yeah, I get that. I just don't know if anybody is watching the State of the Union. I feel like they would understand that if the Democrats weren't there, why they weren't there, and
But what
if
I'm
they
saying to
wanted
you
to
is that for
believe,
me, I would be upset. So not anybody, because I'm literally like, if they weren't there,
right.
I would be curious as to why you're not there. What is your positionality? You're just like, I'm just not going to pay attention to what this person is saying. And I also think, as far as like strategizing and organizing, you definitely have to know how and what the person that doesn't align with you, what they're thinking, and how
But don't we
they're.
know that though? I mean,
We do, but we don't know the strategies and the tactics that they're using.
yeah, we
For
do.
all of the things that
We have Project 2025 that tells us everything, right?
that part of it completely,
Yeah.
but for all of the things that they are in his State of the Union address, what you have a window into are the direct places outside of that entire project that they are targeting next. So like if you're looking at the economy, you know what I mean? Like you're seeing like the specific details. If he starts to say that, oh, we're taking away driver's licenses for people, then you automatically begin to know within the context of Project 2025, then that is just a methodology to remove people from being able to have vote, for remove people from being able to have benefits, for remove people to be able to move, with freedom and autonomy, because if you get stopped and you don't have an ID, then you now know that you're going to be over criminalized and put into these new jails that they're building up in different communities. So to hear those things and to have your representative sit in responsiveness to it, like to bear witness to the harm and the violation that the administration is going to execute, and to in your bear witnessing, sitting there and not being in responsiveness. So in the opportunity where he is saying that, look, they're not even standing up, for me, it's saying to me, great, I know that my representative is not with the fuckery right now. And they are visibly demonstrating and showing, okay, they're not. For whoever did stand up or did clap or did twitch a little bit, I'm visually looking for and looking to see that responsiveness. If you're not there, then I am curious as to what else that you are doing that you won't bear witness to what you have to be working towards being in opposition of.
I wholeheartedly agree. If they didn't show up, then they needed to do something instead of, not just sit at home and say, well, I'm not going to go. There needed to be a town hall. They needed to just be spending time with their constituents, talking about, this is why I didn't go, because we know that everything he's going to spout is not true, and we can all watch it afterwards because it'll be available on all the platforms to look at and to dismember and take apart and look at all the details of it. So let's talk about what we can do differently. I wholeheartedly agree.
We got to hear the plans. We got to hear him say that he's going to.
I don't know that we did he say anything that surprised you? I'm curious.
I was definitely, when he started talking about the driver's licenses, I was surprised that he was clearly saying, we're going to take away, like, to hear, like, that's what's going to be the execution. I was like a little bit like, not surprise is not the way, but like, saddened by the affirmation of it, right? And knowing that they're going to move forward with the legislation and and being able in that moment to recognize the impact of that. And then also thinking also in that moment of, okay, what are the different types of programs and policies that we can put in place to secure folks like that? So how can we, if they can't get a driver's license, they still can get and apply for just at least state licenses. So you might not be able to drive, but at least you can have some form of an ID if they will allow you to have an ID, because you can't
get an ID. They just have to have their dead name on it. They have to have their.
Well, that's for the trans community, but I'm talking about for the migrant community.
Oh,
right?
gotcha.
In Florida, in particular, I'm thinking about the tons of people who are, immigrant status at this point. If you're all of your driver's license IDs, what are the other IDs that we could make sure that people get? They could get a medical ID, they could get just a state ID, other things like that. So like that's what my brain goes into. I got to hear what it is that this man is talking about actually doing. We know the overall template of the policy through Project 2025, but we don't know the specific execution. And during the State of the Union, he kind of alludes to that. He alludes to the things that he's going to praise.
Yeah.
And to hear that, so that then you can go back into the town halls and say, what are the things that we're going to do to stand against that and make sure that the American citizen and populations are able to survive and thrive in their communities under this type of administration.
I think that's an argument for all of us as, people that are interested in learning about what he's going to say. I think all of the members of Congress get a copy of the speech before he even says it. So if they want to know what he's going to say, it's right there. I hear what you're saying about wanting them to bear witness. I guess I'm past that and wanting to just break out of, I want to see our elected officials, if they're going to stay elected officials, I want them to do it differently. I want them to think outside the box and shake it up, and not just give him another 2 hours of unending, uninterrupted rally time to just, to show everybody how stupid he is and how uneducated he is, or how impaired he is. I mean,
he still gets that without them showing up.
Oh, I know.
He gets the 2 hours. The networks, he gets the 2 hours.
I know. And if to anybody that I elected, that I voted for, I would rather them spend their time doing something different than, because they know what he's about. They know what he's going to do. I mean, I don't know. I feel like we need to start expecting or asking for them to do something different than what they've always done.
That's the platform that he ran on. So we're going to do it different than we've ever done. Big government out of your lives. We do know that big government is more intensely in our lives.
Oh, I know.
Which is the thing.
He ran on exposing the Epstein files.
They're doing it different.
They are. They are. I guess I mean the opposition, the people that are saying they oppose do it differently, shake the table more or differently than what it's like. They're still sitting in their comfort. Their comfort zone is still to sit in that chamber and say, I'm not going to stand up and I'm not going to clap. That's comfortable for me. In watching them do that, that's a comfort zone for them. It troubles them not, to be there. And so it's like, okay, you're my elected official. I voted for you. So do something. Don't just sit there with your arms crossed and tell me you're not going to clap. I don't care if you clap or not. I want you to do something. So
you want some movements. and the thing to do, because I love really focusing on solutions. The thing to do would be in community, be having town halls, be mobilizing, kind of collective power building and action when this legislation comes in, like all of the legal components to be able to slow down the process of it getting approved when you're living in states like Florida that has a shortened legislative session. And so you can't get things done as quickly as you would like it to go. And then you'd have to wait for the next legislative session to open up. And if
they're truly in the oppositional party, be oppositional, in a true sense, I mean, I know that's not easy. It's,
no, it's not easy. And it's like, also for me, it's not the vision again, because I am seeing less of a difference between what we're considering opposition as far as Democrat and Republican ideology.
Agreed.
Right. And so at this point, I'm like, what are the methods that we can identify where we recognize our key issues are, which is some of the things in the State of the Union address, the economy, immigration, and all of that. And how can we have adult conversations that get to policies and legislation that actually is going to benefit a larger amount of people? Because the reality of the situation, when we always talk about any type of organizing strategy, is that when you serve the least, because of the hierarchical structures that we exist under, those who have the most are always going to benefit anyway
Always going to benefit.
and have what they need increase. And I just don't
Mhm.
understand why our representatives aren't using those models that have also been tried and true throughout the ages to have greater advancement, evolution in our economies, in the way that we receive the folks that are migrating into this country, in the way that we deal with our social trust issues and all that kind of stuff. Like in this moment, like trying to develop a white identified country when there's such a melting pot to be able to kind of like differentiate that. You're just creating more divisiveness, which is what we know. I feel like I'm talking in circles in this moment, but it's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a demonstration of more divisiveness. I'm looking for like a bearing witness. Think about listening and then developing solutions that are more partisan so that we as US citizens don't have this negative impact that the legislation is causing, because everyone is going. The more people who have less access get less access, the more violence, harm you have. You're not creating the safe environments that you are claiming that you want to achieve. And you are creating systems of slavery. The systems of slavery in this day and age you're dealing with a different human. You're dealing with a more evolved human. You're dealing with a more connected, globally human. You're dealing with a more educated human. The least of us still are walking around with cell phones, and information is being shared across people who typically didn't have information. So to captive minds in the way that you used to, there are too many different inputs that are giving information, and so they cut all of that access off.
The picture that you're painting is a beautiful one, and I feel like the reason we don't get movement in that direction is because the people that are supposed to represent the party or the side that wants to do those things doesn't truly want to do those things. They're too easily persuaded to stay in their comfort, which is, we know, is a one of the key tenets of white supremacy is protecting your comfort. And even people that would not identify as white in that chamber on the Democratic side, it feels like there is an ingrained or embedded refusal to really shake it up, to do it differently, to say, I know this is going to be
because they're existing in their comfort too, though.
Right. They're all
depending on, no matter what your ethnic background is,
right.
When you have reached, that level of power with with guiding the way that the United States runs and is administrated, you are in a certain level of comfort. And that's why I'm not making a distinction between Republican and Democratic.
No, I know. But that's my point. They don't care they don't care to do the thing that you just described. They don't care that this country is being pushed more and more and more towards a white-only country. They don't care that the immigrants are being rounded up and disappeared and murdered, and that children are being, they don't care about any of it. And so that's why I feel like we have to, as constituents, we have to push them to get real about the fact that they don't care, and whether or not that's even possible, I don't know. But as their constituents, as the people who voted for them, we have to demand them to be better. We have to demand that I
don't want to believe that they don't care. We have to think.
I don't think they care.
That they don't care. I'm curious about not caring or trying to identify methods to take screws out of the machine piece by piece. Because blowing up the machine is not
see it if they're actually doing that. I would love to see it, but I don't see that. I mean, that circling back to, I wish they hadn't I wish they just hadn't shown up To me, that's taking some screws out of the machine. It wouldn't have impacted, it wouldn't have changed his trajectory or what he was going to talk about, but it would have shook it up.
What would the outcomes
You know
or
what I mean?
goals, besides just shaking up cultural process, what would have the outcomes or goals been of that strategic demonstration?
Of not showing up?
Mm-hmm.
Doing something else, doing something with their constituents, or doing something that maybe took some of the thunder away from the State of the Union, because we know it was all falsehoods and lies, and it was a rally. So do another rally, do another, use your time to talk to your constituents, use your time to build coalition, within. Find the people that want to work with you to do it differently, to take those screws out of the machine. I mean, I'm not suggesting that they don't show up and then they just, sit on their couch and watch it too. They needed to do something. And that was an opportunity for them to do something at the same time of take the wind out of his sails, because it would have pissed him off if nobody had been there. It would have, and it would have derailed his speech. And then they could have used that time to do something more productive.
All right.
I know we're going around in circles.
No, it's not circles. I'm just saying we'll give it. One of our wonderful strategies would have been to do something different. So there, Deanna said it, y'all. Different. That's what we give AF about, doing it.
And if it feels uncomfortable, you're in the right direction.
That is it. Make it uncomfortable.
Yeah. Whatever feels uncomfortable, it's like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing that, because clearly that's going to be the thing that is going to be the not the solution, but it's like, we know, especially as white people, I'm talking about whiteness right now, we are so used to being comfortable that I don't always know what the right thing to do in certain circumstances is, but I do know that if I feel uncomfortable doing it, it's probably the right thing, because my comfort is in every space, right? So if I'm uncomfortable, I'm on the right track.
Something is happening. Yes. Yeah. I love it. Let's get uncomfortable.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. And let's demand our electeds get uncomfortable.
Get uncomfortable and create different change.
Do something.
That is it.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, as you move throughout your day, continue to ask yourself,
Why Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Diane. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.